Hello, welcome back to Whose Views, and yes, it's another Chit Chat, and I am absolutely delighted to welcome to Chit Chat and to the channel the one and only Richard, also known as Bluworm. Hello there.
Hello back to you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, listen, thank you for coming on. It's an absolute thrill to see you. How are you?
I'm doing fine.
Oh, good. Now first of all, let me ask you, whereabouts in the world are you, Richard?
I am in the very south of Sweden, almost as far down the south you can go.
Yeah, yeah. So
Born and raised over here, still living here, working here.
good for you. Good for you. Sweden. I've never been. I must get over there at some point.
It's yeah, it's a big country. I think it's bigger than you think actually when you start traveling around it. It's a
Yeah.
little bit parts of it. The further north up you come, the longer the roads get, and the further you have to travel between points of civilization, kind of. But down
Oh,
here in the south, you can travel around by train or car and get to where you're going pretty quickly. And we have pretty, I think, pretty nice nature. I have the sea just a couple of miles ahead of me.
oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, well, I'm thrilled that you're here because there's a few things that we need to talk about. What I want to start with, though, of course, though, Mister, is I want to ask you first of all, how did you find the Doctor?
Well, the thing is, for the longest time, we only had two TV channels in Sweden,
Oh,
and they were both public TV channels, so taxpayer funded, just like the BBC. And
yeah.
we did have a ton of shows from the UK, lots of documentaries and crime shows and drama, and lots of children's programming, and lots of comedy. Benny Hill was extremely popular over here
He
in
got
the 80s.
everywhere, didn't he?
I think he did actually. I've talked to people I know down in Africa who enjoyed Benny Hill when they were growing up,
Yeah.
and they had we had All Creatures Great and Small was a big hit, um, stuff like that, and we had a little bit of science fiction. We didn't have, for example, the Tomorrow People. We didn't have Blake Seven. We didn't have Doctor Who.
Oh.
Uh, we did have the Day of the Triffids, which I
Wow.
think is still think is one of the best TV dramas ever made. And we
Mm-hmm.
had children's programming like the Tripods
Oh,
and
yes.
Shocky. If you remember, Shocky had quite a few seasons.
I do remember that.
Yeah,
Yes.
and then of course we had stuff from other countries. We had a German TV show called Raumschiff Orion, and and
What's that
eventually
about?
it's a German black and white TV show about a big spaceship, kind of like the Enterprise, Star Trek and Enterprise, called
Right.
the Orion.
Oh.
And eventually, like most people of my age, I was cradled in the hairy bosom of Buck Rogers. Eventually, which, like Ben Hill, I think went all over the world. We did have Space 1999,
Oh,
actually.
did you?
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
it was called Moonbase Alpha over here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And but we did have a news vendor, a local news vendor, who had a bunch of magazines from the US and the UK. And I taught myself how to read English very early on. And I got my parents to monthly buy a magazine called Starlog, if you're familiar with
Yes.
good old
Yeah.
Starlog.
Yes,
And we had,
definitely. Yeah.
um, actually have one here.
Oh, that brings back memories.
Yeah, we even have a happy looking Mel Gibson. You don't see that every day nowadays.
No, you
But
don't.
they had articles quite often about this character called Doctor Who.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I read them all, a little bit befuddled. Here we
Yes.
have the fifth. And sometimes it was played by this tall, curly haired guy with a long scarf.
Yeah.
And sometimes it was played by that blonde guy who I recognized from All Creatures Great
All
and
creatures.
Small. And eventually a third guy came along who also had curly hair and a multicolored coat. And the only constant was these strange creatures that turned up in all the stills from the TV show. These pepper pot looking alien mechanical creatures. And I kept reading and I figured out that, okay, so it is the same character, but he's changing his appearance when he is mortally wounded. And then I think it was 81, we went to the UK for a holiday.
Yeah.
And I got a book about monsters that had a few more pages about Doctor Who, so a few more pieces to the puzzle. And I did get my first Target books.
Ah, fantastic.
Yeah, so now I really got into it. Actually, I didn't. We have not reached my initiation into TV Who yet. I did see another TV show. I did see an episode of Blake Seven, which
All
got me
right.
hooked on Blake Seven. We were staying in a bed and breakfast up north in England, and it was packed to the rafters. We were the last people to get in and get a room, and we
Yeah.
went down to the breakfast room the next day, and not a soul was there. So we asked, "Where is everybody?" And the matron said, "Oh, they're in the TV room." And the TV room was this tiny square room with a really small color television. So we poked our heads in, and sure enough, everyone was crammed in there with their toast and the scrambled eggs and stuff, and they were hypnotically staring at the TV screen, showing this sci-fi show. And my parents said, "Would you like to watch it?" And sure, I said. And I got some breakfast, and I squeezed in between two guys on a sofa, and they had this on this wintry heath. They had this kind of Rob Halford cosplay looking guy who was shooting people in ape costumes. And I turned to the guy next to me and said, "What's going on?" And he calmly explained, "Well, there is this galactic empire and this group of rebels." And I thought, well, this sounds familiar. And they're marooned. The rebels are marooned on this planet where evolution has sped up. And these ape creatures are us, humanity, in a couple of million years. We will devolve into these primitive creatures. And I thought, well, this is great. I didn't find out what it was until later that year. I got another issue of Starlog to the Rescue, and they had an interview with Paul Darrow,
Yeah.
played the guy in leather and studs, Avon, and they actually had a still from that exact episode I watched, and I read up on Blake Seven. My parents separated in '85, and my dad moved to the States to work for the American car industry as an engineer. And I went over there during my summer hiatus in '86, and he gave me the TV guide, and he said, "You'll love this," because we still only had those two TV channels in Sweden. And here we had hundreds, and I just started flipping through them, watching anything and everything from, Japanese monster movies to Gilligan's Island. And one day I came across an episode of Doctor Who, and it was just starting up with the intro, and there appeared that curly-haired guy with a scarf, and I said, "Wow, this is it. This is finally the moment. The moment has arrived." I'm finally watching Doctor Who, and it was the first episode of The Sunmakers.
Oh.
So the Doctor didn't appear for a little while. We were on Pluto to kind of set up the story, and then we went into the TARDIS, and there he is, and there's that dog I've seen in photos in Starlog, and that girl I've also seen from photos in Starlog. And I could see that it was shot like many British TV shows, like The Day of the Triffids, like Emmerdale Farm, which was another must-see in Sweden.
Wow.
Yeah, Swedish women threw their panties at the TV screens every time Fraser Hines turned up. So
he was like that.
Yeah, I think he has some kind of untapped gold mine. Swedish female pensioners that you should look into as a fan base that has nothing to do with Doctor Who, of course. But But anyway,
Brilliant.
I watched it, and as I said, I could see that the indoor parts were shot a certain way with a certain sound, and the outdoor parts were shot another way with a
Yeah.
certain sound. And also that, having already seen stuff like Buck Rogers, and there was an even simpler TV show that I adored, made for Saturday mornings in the USA. We had in Sweden called Jason of Star Command, which had short episodes, live action, and or as the every episode started with a really hearty announcer yelling "Jason of Star Command," and they had a ton of special effects, stop motion monsters, and spaceship battles, and wonderful costumes and such. And I could see that parts of the Sunmakers were very well done, and others were some of the sets were kind of a little bit iffy, a little bit, simpler made. However, it didn't matter because the story was great and
Hmm.
fast paced,
Yeah.
25 packed minutes.
Hmm.
And you couldn't take your eyes off the Doctor, and of course, you couldn't take your eyes off Leela for other reasons. I prefer blue-eyed Leela, by the way,
Okay.
and I love the cheeky robot dog and all of that. All the actors were great, and the story was great. I could see that they're kind of making fun of tax system and government and all of that, but they placed it in a sci-fi setting, which to me is great sci-fi. You can use sci-fi for a lot of things, including satire. So I
Yeah.
watched all the episodes. I don't think I'm not sure it was on PBS because they aired one episode per day, and after that I was hooked for
Yeah.
life. I got my first VHS tape in. I went back to the UK in '89, and I bought, for some reason, I picked Warriors of the Deep.
Okay.
Which has its ups and downs. And I
You're
also
very
grabbed,
kind.
yeah, they had also, where I bought it, a stack of tapes with Blake Seven. So I just grabbed one.
Yeah.
Then they had 2 episodes per tape. Now I have the whole thing on DVD.
Yeah.
And I've, slowly been building my DVD collection regarding Doctor Who. And I have my favorite stories and my favorite eras and all of that. I haven't gone into Blu-ray yet, but
Yeah.
I slowly grew. It was a very long story to tell, but I slowly grew into a Whovian with just snippets of hints of what the show was about before I actually. But I was fascinated by it, and flipping through Starlog, they always had ads about. They had a Doctor Who role-playing game, and they had pins and badges and posters and books and stuff.
Yeah.
So I realized this is a big thing uh, in America as well as in Britain.
Mm. Mm. I mean, you mentioned some of the merchandise there.
Yeah,
What was the merchandise like then? What's it like now over with you in Sweden?
it's very little.
Is
It's
there?
it's it's hardly anything. We have a sort of native forbidden planet, you could say.
Okay. Yeah.
They started off with just books, and then videotapes, and now DVDs and Blu-rays and other
Hmm.
merchandise. They have a fair bit of merchandising, and they are now they set up shop in Stockholm many years ago, and then they have spread to, I think, 3 or 4 other cities, bigger cities in Sweden.
Hmm.
And you can pick up some stuff there, but it's always sold out. So the geeks go there and they buy the stuff so they can handle it. They can buy it off eBay or
Of
whatever they
course.
want
Yeah.
to, but they want to look at the stuff.
Yeah. Of course.
And
Yeah.
actually, I picked up one thing just to illustrate.
Ah.
An item for my
Fabulous.
stash.
Yes.
This is a Cushing Dalek SE model kit
Yes.
made by Comet,
Yes.
made in England, 1973. And I've come across this on eBay,
Yeah.
and it's it doesn't go for anything cheaper than $100 or so.
You're
That's
kidding me. Is
sometimes
that
even
how much
more.
it is now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I found this in a Swedish toy shop some
Oh,
years ago, and
yeah.
it was gathering dust on a shelf among other model kits because nobody knew what this was, and and I bought it for just a fraction of what
Wow.
they want for it on eBay because it didn't have the cultural history
Yeah.
this would have had in any country where people had grown up with
Hmm.
Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So, and that's the way it is. If I we have a kind of Swedish version of eBay, and you can find some Doctor Who merchandising there, but it's sold for much lower prices than you would find them at Forbidden Planet and so on. Yeah, you can't
It's
find all of it, but you can find some things here and there.
it's very odd, isn't it, Richard? Because obviously, I'm lucky that I get to speak to a lot of people, a lot of fellow fans from around the world, and because I'm a bit of a merchandise person myself, and I love. Well, I used to collect a lot. Um, it's interesting when you ask them, where'd you get your merchandise from? It's very, very difficult for people to get the stuff. So it shows that the distribution of all this merchandise isn't as big as people may assume. Because okay,
No,
yes, you can get a lot of stuff here, obviously in the UK, but it doesn't make it over to you in Sweden. It doesn't make it over to Australia. Only parts of it will get to America, and even then, it's through various places. There are other parts of Europe it doesn't get to. There are definitely issues there.
well, I think it's all about having, for example, if you have a shop like Forbidden Planet, say in Italy, for example,
Yeah.
you will import stuff that you can sell. You can always sell Star Trek. That's a global phenomena. You can
Mm.
always sell stuff regarding the X-Files, the Alien movies, Star Wars, and stuff like that.
Mm.
But Doctor Who, as big as it is quite niche.
Yes.
Um, as I said, we never showed it on Swedish television until we started getting a few commercial channels with commercial breaks and stuff like that. And we had one that kind of tried to be the Swedish MTV, but it was extremely low budget, kind of embarrassing, very bad hosts for the
Oh.
shows. But they bought Doctor Who from, I think it was Pertwee, Baker, and Davison. And
Right.
they kind of showed that on a loop as
Yeah.
kind of cult television. Look, this is a little bit silly,
What sort of
kind
year?
of
What sort of year are you? We're talking about here.
90s, I guess.
Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then we
Wow.
launched into sort of revival with Chris Eccleston
Yeah.
in 2005, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
We got it. Uh, I think it aired almost simultaneously on Swedish television,
Oh.
actually, because Swedish TV started buying the television rights to air BBC shows long before they were even filmed. Lots of Charles Dickens shows and crime dramas and stuff like that. Because
Okay.
they knew this will be, no, it'll find an audience. So it's already. And we also have stuff like the Antiques Roadshow
Oh, do you?
and whatever, yeah. Uh, and anyway, um,
I thought you'd have your own version of that over there. To be
we
quite
do
honest.
too. Yeah, we do
Ah.
too. But we are Anglophiles. You have to understand. I mean,
Oh
the
yes. Yes. Yeah.
Midsummer Murders is kind of a religion in Sweden. You don't miss it. I mean,
Brilliant.
if they show the latest season and you admit you missed the episode and people will judge you,
No, really.
something's wrong with you. How could you miss that? Yeah, and then we have you know newer TV shows like Luther and stuff like that, but they're mostly relegated to streaming services, which is
Ah,
what
right.
people are watching more and more. So nothing wrong
Yeah.
with that. Yeah, but
Mm.
the and so we still have those two public TV channels, and we are
Yeah.
still paying a viewer's fee, just like you are for that. and that's mandatory. You can't get away from it. It's packed into the taxes you pay over here, so you can't get away
Really?
from it. Yeah, you pay for that, and you pay for your public radio, and some of it is good, and some of it is woke beyond belief. Let's just use the word
No,
for,
really.
yeah. It's incredible. Anyway, um,
That's interesting.
the what should we call it? The new Who, the Eccleston version,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. That's fine.
launched and didn't find its audience at all. So they showed the whole first season and it came and went, and they showed nothing that came after it at all.
Right.
So that was the only. That was a short and cold love affair between Sweden and Doctor Who. But at that point, it didn't matter because I could get hold of the DVD box sets, and I just plowed through them.
Oh, bless you.
And I did subscribe for quite a while, for many years, to Doctor Who magazine as well as SFX. But again, things have changed,
Yes.
and instead of standing up for what used to be good and acknowledging that these magazines, because I don't read them anymore, I don't have them anymore. They kind of, danced along to the tune of the new Piper.
Yeah.
And I said, do you really think this is good? And they had enthusiastic interviews with, Jodie Whittaker and the rest.
Yeah.
And I said, you can't be serious.
Mm.
And at the same time, they would run, reviews of Blu-ray sets of Tom Baker seasons, and they would be lauded as well. And I kind of, you can't like them both. Actually, there's a universe of differences between them.
Totally
Yeah.
agree. Yeah. I mean, you're right about that. I mean, I don't buy those magazines regularly at all now either. And it's heartbreaking in a sense because you follow them for years. I mean, I bought Doctor Who magazine for 40 something years. But then the balance went. I remember the days in Doctor Who weekly and monthly where you would actually get fans writing in good old fashioned letters, Richard,
Yeah.
criticizing things. They'd be saying, I didn't like that episode because, or I didn't like that story because, or I didn't like that because, whatever it was. You don't get any of that these days because it's just simply not tolerated. And it's very silly, and it's a misstep in my eyes that they haven't put a balance in there, because we've now got an entire generation that have grown up thinking that everybody needs to, you can't disagree with anything, and anybody that does disagree with anything is nasty, is a nasty person. If your opinion doesn't tally with mine, you're a nasty person. It's not how it works, and it's a shame,
No,
really, isn't it?
it's everywhere. It's in the schools and universities, and as usual, when something really starts to go wrong in the world, it starts with the opinions of the intellectuals who should know better.
Yep.
And there's a common, I think, misconception that the Nazis came to power because they were the voice of the people who were, the downtrodden common man who were uh, remembered what happened in the last war, and they were very bitter, and they saw the National Socialists as the next solution. Uh, as far as I understand, that's not really the case. The National Socialists got quite a lot of support by the intellectuals, the professors, the elite.
Yeah.
Should have
And
known
people that
better.
were going to gain something as well.
Sure, but they should have known better, kind of. And,
Oh
and I guess
yeah,
they were patriots as well, and they were bitter as well. But they
yeah.
were the people that the common man kind of listened to, and the media of the day listened to. And that's the case now. I talk to friends in the U.S. and I hear about what's happened in universities over there, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
wild. It's absolutely crazy. But things are
yeah,
starting to change simply because of one thing, namely money. And I don't know what's like in the UK, but the American universities are somewhat dependent on funding from rich people, from rich families, who say we will endorse your school in various ways when my kids go there.
Right.
and we'll help out. We'll donate. We'll help out financially, and you can keep the rain off the roof,
Mm.
so to speak. But now they are saying, if you're going to clamp down on critical race theory or whatever it might be, strange values that we don't agree with, we're not sending our kids to you, and we'll withdraw our funding as well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
they're starting to feel kind of the nippy bites of that, I
Hmm.
think. And I don't know how universities work in the UK, if they also get a bit of funding from the high
No,
mighty.
no, no, no. It's very different here. I mean, the majority of our education is set up through the taxpayer,
Yeah,
and we don't really get a say in how these things are run. Various schools will argue that they listen to parents and what have you. I would like to see proof of that, Richard, because unfortunately, this ideological nonsense that we're all having to put up with at the moment is in everywhere, and I've seen this firsthand myself. It's enforced into our children's lives as well. And now, of course, it's enforced into what they're watching on television as well. So it's very
yeah,
there's no balance. That's what I'm trying to say here. It's always this is what you will believe. You've heard me say this on Whose Views as well. You will think like us, you will be like us, and there's no alternative. And that's when it gets a little bit unbalanced, because there isn't that alternative point of view come across. And I think that's why the rise of YouTube's and its other platforms on the same has just gone through the roof over the last few years, isn't it? Really, because it's
sure.
opened up a platform.
It's YouTube is a platform for discussion, and some of it is just plain old mudslinging and name calling and stuff like that. But
Most
there's
social
also,
media is though, mate, isn't it?
yeah, sure it is.
Yeah.
But I mean, there is some kind of debate, let's call it that, at
Yes.
least.
At
And
least, yeah.
and there are some very good debates going on, but the the debate is extinct for the people who have decided what's right and what's not. Kind of
Oh,
the
totally.
woke crowd. But okay, I it's a little bit worn, that expression now, but it's still the best one we can use as a
Mm,
shorthand. The thing is that if you look at who these people are, they are behaving a certain way. I know a bully when I see one,
yes.
and they are bullies.
Totally
Also,
agree.
they are they are narcissists, um, and I'm in absolute despair about how they have, maybe not them, but well, they too, to some degree, as individuals, but their opinions have infiltrated pop culture so quickly, and it has turned good old franchises upside down and absolutely trashed them. Um, and they're losing money. And again, getting back to that, I think that will eventually right the wrongs, because the companies, the production companies making the TV shows and the movies and whatnot, they can't go on creating stuff that nobody will pay for,
Mm,
simply, or they will go broke. And so it will right itself. But the question is, we already know that when that happens, a lot of damage has been done, and people might not be interested in superhero movies anymore. That may not be a bad thing, actually. But genre movies have taken quite a beating because of ideologues coming in and changing around things that were that didn't need any changing to begin with.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I totally agree what you're saying, and it's interesting as well what you're saying there as well. This could be turning around. I wish I had your faith in it. I don't see it. Maybe it's because I'm in the UK and things are always a little bit slower here. I think we're in the midst of this ideological war, as it were, right now. And it's getting worse. We've got various politicians now that are actually backing here compelled speech. And we've got a general election coming up this year, and a couple of the parties are coming out saying they will endorse that. They will bring compelled speech into what is supposed to be a democratic country. When you've got the television shows as well, like you're saying there, and in pop culture as well, also dictating this. I mean, if we look at Disney, for example, they're losing money, millions and millions and millions, daily, and they're pulsing through. They're carrying on. They're carrying on. The BBC here in the UK, as you know, because you've heard us talking about it, not popular at all with the majority of the British public right now. They are in trouble. Their shows are not getting anything. We sell it, or certain people celebrate when a show gets 4 million these days, rather than the huge heights it were. And then they say it's because television, the way people watch television, has changed. And yet, on the other hand, there are shows that bring them in,
Yeah,
to show that it hasn't.
it's
It's bizarre.
still bringing them in, sure, yeah. And I mean, people still watch the big, sports events on live television and stuff like that because it's an event that you
Yeah.
want to be a part of. And
Yeah.
but the change is so great, um, and the people doing, again, talking specifically about Doctor Who,
Yeah.
um, I I prefer the classic era. Again, because it's so compact and because of the quality, the stuff they were able to do without really having the money to do it. All
Absolutely.
the big ideas, the big
Yeah.
story, and they
Yeah.
managed to pull it off somehow.
Yes.
And it's very inspirational, kind of, if you are a creative person yourself. And with the DVDs, and if you really want to get into Doctor Who, you should do the physical media. You can watch it on streaming services, but because of just the extras, and you get to know the people behind the show, you get to
Mhm.
you get to listen to the people. It's an oral history, kind of,
Yes.
from
Yeah.
from the people, and they managed to interview so many people before they went. And you
Yes.
have Barrelettes, and you have Tewins Dix, and you
Mhm.
have the ever bemulleted Matt Irvine, and you have all the costume makers and the little snippets from TV shows like Multicolored Swap Shop and Blue Peter and Good Morning Britain, whatever it might be. And they picked out the stuff where the actors appear or any showrunner appears, and or you have Matt Irvine showing how he made a spaceship from an old vacuum cleaner or whatever it might be, and you get
Happy days, Richard.
happy days, and you get a feel for how it kind of permeated into British culture.
Mhm.
On Blue Peter, okay, kids, here's how you can make your own Dalek from an old dustbin or whatever it might be. And today we're starting this Doctor Who monster drawing competition,
Mm,
whatever,
mm.
all that stuff. And I kind of feel that now that they are pumping in money into it. I mean, even during the RTD revival 2005 and onwards, they had more money. The show was slicker, but some of its soul were kind of lost, I think. And now with Disney, sure,
Mm.
it looks better, but it doesn't matter because the content is completely soulless, completely
Yes,
soulless. And
totally.
and when you have you have a showrunner saying without any shame in his body that well, we are telling these stories um, to children, so the children will learn that this is the new normal. This is the new normal, and this is the only opinion you are allowed to have, kind of. And that's malignant. Is the
Yes.
only word I can think of, actually. And uh, I enjoyed, the first four Doctors are what I prefer, kind of, because you had actors who were the Doctor, and then, and it's a personal taste, but then after that, it kind of felt like you have actors pretending to be the Doctor.
Mm.
a little bit more. I didn't feel that kind of uh, connection with any of them, and I really liked Eccleston. I have to say, because he
Did
was
you?
yeah, a bit different. He's a really good actor,
Well,
and
yeah.
he could be goofy, but he also had the steel that the Doctor must have in critical situations. He pulled it both off very well, and I actually saw him the other night on the latest season of True Detective. He popped up there, and he was making violent love to Jodie Foster
Oh, really?
on a cupboard. As they all lovemaking in movies now or look like two people are trying to kill each other.
Right.
And Eccleston was going at it like he was hammering fence posts into the ground.
Oh,
And I
right. Okay.
thought, I recognize that guy. Who is he? And he was a little bit older, a little bit heavier.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but then he was an American. He was playing an American. But
Ah.
he's always good in what he does, I think.
He's always very committed to whatever piece he's doing. You know, he
Yeah.
throws himself into it fully. Yeah. Yeah. And the
And
Doctor was no different as well. The Doctor was a challenge for him. We know that. It was something totally different for him. But he pulled it off magnificently, didn't he?
I think he did. And I'm now in hindsight, I would have liked to see him have at least one other season,
Oh,
and from what then followed, my favorite is actually Matt Smith.
oh, okay. What
Uh,
is it about Matt?
pardon.
What is it about Matt that makes you
Well,
say that?
well, here's the thing. I like my doctors kind of odd and bohemian. So Tom Baker is the number one, of course. He is the number one.
Absolutely.
And then after that is actually Patrick Troughton, who
Ah,
I really like because he had the seriousness, but he was also I don't know about that, my giddy aunt, and all of that. And then after that it's Pertwee and William Hartnell actually. But Matt Smith had that kind of befuddlement. There were moments he put in where he didn't understand humanity, what was going on around him. In the very first episode, when he thinks that Amelia Pond is a policewoman,
yeah.
and she says she tries to explain to him what she's actually doing, and she says, "I'm a kissogram," and he just
Yeah.
he doesn't say anything, but he has no idea what she's talking about.
Well,
And I
neither did
said,
I.
okay. Yeah. But I said, well, there's the Doctor. That's the Doctor. It's the comment by Tom Baker in uh, City of Death. Is it?
Yeah.
You're a beautiful woman, probably.
Probably. Yeah.
Yeah. He's kind of.
Yes.
I'm not saying the Doctor can't have a be a romantic character. Maybe he shouldn't be non-sexual totally. He is a grandfather after all. We never found out the backstory for
No, and we
who.
should never
No,
find
and,
that
and
out.
it's not
Really.
it's
Yeah.
not relevant.
Part of the
But
mystery. Yeah.
but Matt Smith had that innocence, and
Yeah.
that kind of I don't know really what's going on, humans, but I'm trying to understand you. I'm still
Mm.
trying to understand you.
Mm.
And Tennant was very sure of himself, and I really like Capaldi too because he's a great actor, and he
Yeah.
was this grouchy William Hartnell-ish character, which is a very fun version of the Doctor too. And well, let's stop there. Actually,
Yes.
the
Well,
very
that's
last.
where we do stop. You know that, Richard. You and
Yeah,
I. That's
yeah,
where we do stop.
I know that it's heartbreaking to talk about it. Actually, I the last episode of Doctor Who I watched
Yeah.
was the one where, and I have the DVD box, and I haven't watched the rest of it actually because I was so disappointed. It's when Capaldi's Doctor and uh, Bill Potts,
Yeah.
the lesbian, because that was the whole of her character, that she was lesbian.
Yeah.
They go to Victorian England,
Oh yes, I
and
remember the one. Yeah.
and they come out of the TARDIS, and half the population is black.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And she says, "Oh, I didn't expect this." And he says, "Well, that's because white men have whitewashed history, and Jesus was black, and he gives this indignant speech, and I said, no, no, don't do this, please don't do this. Explain that you're in an alternate universe or whatever, but it isn't. It's supposed to be actual Victorian England,
Yeah.
and I am not colorblind. They talk about we should, accept colorblind casting, but if we do, we have the problem of, I feel it's like, well, Mr. Black actor or actress, here you have a role in a big BBC drama. It's an historical drama. We would never do a historical drama about your heritage in Britain. That's not interesting to us. So we'll just take you and squeeze you into this Elizabethan or Georgian drama
Hmm.
where you very likely never set your foot in this period, and we'll just say that color doesn't matter, but of course it does, because the only reason you got this role is because of your skin color.
Yeah.
So it's this very hypocritical way of dealing with uh, uh, people from another background than the sort of indigenous Britons, and it's extremely grating to me.
Oh yeah.
And So I said, no, thank you. I'll pass up whatever's coming. And then I read about the last Capaldi episode where he meets the first Doctor, and
Yeah.
he meets up with this officer from the First World War.
Right.
And Real Potts, as she always says, she's got to tell the whole world she's a lesbian. And the officer from Edwardian England is embarrassed and appalled, that she's talking about it so openly. And that's probably historically correct. They wouldn't talk about that openly, and she was very forward, and he would react that way. But the first Doctor also reacts the same way, like
Right.
he's an older gentleman from an older Earth culture, but he isn't. He's like Patrick Stewart says in Extras, I've seen it all, and he has. If he's gone to the Time Lord Academy, he'll know about other civilizations, other cultures, other alien races where they have all kinds of genders and sexual orientation and
Yeah.
whatever. He wouldn't be offended by it. He wouldn't
Well,
react
it's
that
not.
way.
It's not that. It's not even just that he would offend over it. He wouldn't care. I mean, this
No, he
is the
wouldn't care
problem with
about
the scripts of today, isn't it? Because they've shoehorned in all these messages, all these bandwagon messages as well. We've lost the fact, in my opinion. It'd be interesting to see if you agree. We've lost the Doctor. We've lost the
it. Yeah,
Doctor because he's now clouded by all these people that think, oh, we need to put that message in, and we need to put that message in, and he was never there. And you see certain fans always saying, oh, the Doctor wouldn't do that. Well, it's stupid to say that sort of thing because one, the Doctor's a fictional character controlled by whoever happens to be producing it at the time. But secondly, as well, the Doctor would always stand with truth and
yeah,
science because he's a scientist, but he's been lost in recent years, hasn't it? I mean, the example you gave there, I think it was Thin Ice, wasn't it? I don't remember it because that whole season for me is a blur. I have to be honest, mate. It was just so silly. So I do remember Stephen Moffat coming along a bit later about that episode, and he was questioned about the casting
yeah,
in what would have been ye olde London. And I'm paraphrasing now, I'm misquoting him, but he said basically that today, for today's television and the expectations that the industry has for today's television, they have to bend the truth. So what's the point in doing it? If you've got to bend the truth, if you cannot show the truth, then basically you're telling a lie. So why? What's the point? Don't bother.
Well, I also read probably the same comment that he said something to the effect of, we prefer to show history as it should have been instead
Yeah,
of what it was
which is
like.
wrong, isn't it? Yeah.
And don't do that.
Yeah.
Do say that we have ended up in an alternative Britain, an alternative history, another
Or
time
just tell the
space.
truth and cast it correctly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do, and now we had Sir Isaac Newton, as a man of color. Why
Yeah.
pick him? Why not go to, let's say, Baghdad before the Mongol invasion that ruined the whole thing, and
Mm.
talk to a Muslim astronomer or a Muslim mathematician? Maybe having a debate with a Hebrew astronomer, because that was what was going on back then,
Mhm.
when science was shaped. Now, wouldn't that have been interesting? Much more interesting, and it would actually have been the truth. It would have been something that especially children watching it would never have heard of, and they go off and maybe do their own research and talk about it in school. I saw in Doctor Who,
Yeah.
because I'm a Muslim boy, and now they showed this from my culture a few hundred years ago. What's that about? Let's talk about that instead.
Mm.
Of,
They're
or
not brave enough to do anything like that, though, are they? I mean,
yeah,
but
but
I mean, it's going
there's
to come
nothing
from their
brave
point of view.
about it. It would be the correct thing to do, and it would open
Yeah,
up
but
the
that's what I mean.
whole.
They're not brave enough to do the correct thing. They have to follow the ideology. They have to follow
Yeah,
the now perceived guidelines as dictated by certain activist groups and charities that have enforced itself really and got into things like show business and politics and education now. I mean, that balance, as I was saying there, it's just not there now. The truth is not there now, because to turn around and say something along the lines of, we wanted to show the history as we think it should have been. Well, who are you? Who are you to
yeah,
say what's right and
that's
wrong?
right.
I mean, it's so hypocritical,
Yes,
you
and
know.
I I have actually watched one episode of the 13th Doctor, the very first one, The Woman Who Fell to Earth, because I
Did you?
thought, yeah, I have to check this out, see what it's all about.
Okay.
And I had an open mind, and I'm sorry, it just didn't work for me. Actually, I blame it on it was a kind of a functional Doctor Who story, with a monster, the monster with the teeth stuck in its skin, and
Oh, I've
all of
forgotten
that.
about that. Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
and the Doctor was kind of you know a little bit befuddled after the regeneration. All of that was recognizable, but and they had good actors in it, but Jodie Whittaker is not one of them. And I was watching her and I was thinking, what's she up to? What the hell is going on here with all her flailing and face making? And is she trying to? Is this a poor imitation of David Tennant's? When he was gurning and making noises and flailing about, or is she doing bubbles from Absolutely Fabulous?
Oh, yeah.
It's and it was just one episode. She was so absolutely grating that
Mm,
I thank God it's over. But I'll
mm.
never watch another one. I will never watch another one just because of her. And if they had another actor, maybe I would have been more interested. But she killed it dead for me, and
Mm.
and that may be a terrible thing to say, but
No, it's
that's what
just your
happened.
opinion, so it's not.
Yeah,
No.
that's my. I couldn't cope with it. I'm sorry.
Well, you're
Um,
not alone. Let's face it. Millions of people deserted the show during that
yeah,
era, and it looks like the new era is going to do the same thing. I was going to ask you though. I mean, where does Disney Plus come into this with you guys over there? I mean, you've got to subscribe to Disney Plus in order to see any new Doctor Who, yeah?
yeah, we
And
do.
have you done
But
that?
no, I haven't. But I actually have a package of channels, streaming channels, streaming services, and we have a streaming version of the BBC where
Ah,
you can
okay.
yeah, you can see Antiques Roadshow, and you can see whatever they have, all the basic shows.
So did they have the
Uh,
new version, the reboot Doctor Who on there with Shooty Gatwa and David Tennant?
uh, I haven't watched it. I've
Yeah,
stayed away from it. Actually,
yeah.
they might have actually, but I also have iPlayer. I would be able to watch it there, I'm guessing. But
You see,
I
now that's
just
interesting actually, because we've spoken about this on the show. iPlayer is supposed to be for inside the UK and Ireland only,
okay.
for license fee payers, and yet everybody, we know for a fact, nobody listens to us, but we know for a
No,
fact it does get out of the UK. We've got people all around the world
sure.
accessing the iPlayer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You
There are
know,
ways. I mean, you don't have to try too hard. But
Obviously,
I
yeah.
no, yeah, I kind of threw in the towel with Doctor Who during the Chibnall era, what he came up with, and the we had the notion of, well, maybe Russell T Davies coming back, maybe he'll do a soft reboot, and
Mm,
we can sleep easily now, and it just got
mm,
worse,
mm.
and and um, and his absolute insults, not just to the show but to the fans and everything. And now he's high on the opportunity that his little production company is in cahoots with Disney and the things that may come. Uh, but there's nothing to hope for. And again, it's a pity because I've just seen a little bit of Shooty Gatwa as an actor, and I think he's good. I think he's a sympathetic character, and he's probably a really nice person privately also. And I wish him well. Okay, do this, then go get your Hollywood career.
Well, yeah.
I am beyond elated that Matt Smith is doing so well in
Oh,
his
yeah. But
career.
that's because he's a very good, talented, researched actor. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's probably a really nice guy too. I mean, we have some Swedish actors who are doing the rounds for decades in Hollywood. We have Stellan Skarsgård and all
Yes.
his brood, the Skarsgård kids. I don't know how many of them are there, from Alexander to Bill and everyone. And then we have what you call Peter Stormare, but it's
Yeah.
actually called Peter Stormare. That's how it's
Oh,
pronounced.
right.
And he usually turns up playing a bad guy,
Yes, very much so.
a really grimy, nasty-looking bad guy. But
Yes.
but both Stellan and Peter are two of the nicest people you could ever know, and they are very, whatever about absolutely everything. Whatever. Oh, sure, I'll do
What?
it. I'll try it one. Yeah, whatever. And they don't have any kind of diva pretensions, and that's what people uh, appreciate in America, in American show business, that they are easy to handle, and they don't ask for the really big salaries, and they're kind of there to do the craft,
Mm.
basically. And I think a lot of British actors are the same. They are there to do a good job, and they do.
We
And
we
then
do still have some good British actors around that are of that, like Matt Smith, and some of them. A lot of them are divas as well. Some of them are just there just to, have a face, as it were, to be famous and
sure,
what have you. But in hindsight, we were very lucky to have the likes of Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi in Doctor Who, because they're two extremely good actors, and we were very lucky to have them.
yeah.
Mm.
Anyway, that's that. Let's see what happens. I think that when we talk about it and we say, "Oh, Doctor Who Beyond Redemption," and I actually say no. The only thing you need is you have to get rid of Disney and preferably get rid of the BBC. And the show might be smaller for a smaller audience. You have to get a showrunner who will say, "I'll just write a script that goes back to, it resets everything from the Chibnall era forward.
Mm.
We'll just start anew and maybe do something like the Eccleston reboot, where you don't really know who the Doctor is. He's just this mysterious guy who turns up, and we have this blue box that comes and goes, and the characters who encounter him find out along with the audience, and then they go back and they start doing a little bit more. This is his history. This is what happened in the classic era, and all of that stuff. And I'm sure it can be done, but you have to leave a lot of crap behind to be able to do it. And you have to
Yeah,
have someone without an agenda, a showrunner with only one agenda, and it is to make a really good TV show for people of
totally.
all ages.
Totally. I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. And I would actually also state to that it would need to come off the air for a good while, because
Sure.
well, one thing as well, you can't get rid of the BBC. It's their property. It's always going to be their property. They're never going
Sure.
to sell it off because they know they've got something there. It's just that they've never executed it properly, as we fans can tell them. Even this new reiteration is not going to make them the big, huge books that they're expecting it to do. So that the BBC will always stay in it, but I reckon it's got to come off the air simply because in Britain right now, it's on a life support. The British public do not care about this show. They do not tune into the show. Don't care what anybody comments about. They don't. They're not interested. And it has become a bit of a farce as well, in that it's ridiculed an awful lot because it's being too woke, it's being too progressive, its storylines don't match up. The special effects are sometimes get knocked on the head. Well, they did previous to this reiteration. The personal pronoun speech in the Star Beast thing as well, that got huge bad press. I mean, it was everywhere, basically, a massive thing. So people now know it for being this sort of ridiculous show again. So it needs to come off the air for a good while, personally, I think, before it can come back in the manner you're talking about.
Yeah, well, that's what happened. The hiatus between 1989 and 2005 did it all.
Oh, happy days. Happy days.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's. I mean, it was the same thing with Star Trek.
Yes, exactly.
It kind of ended with Star Trek Enterprise. Then
Yes,
we have, with the reboot and all of that. I don't really appreciate it terribly much. There are some good bits in there, but they are only bits. I mean, Star Trek is run by people who don't like Star Trek. They have admitted it themselves.
a lot of people have said that, haven't they? Yeah, we don't like this, but we've got the job.
We never watched it as we grew up, but here's an available property that we can do whatever we want with, so we're going to. Okay.
Yeah.
But then when the same people were turned over to Star Wars, which they said they preferred, they messed that up too.
As well. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Awful.
It's all about the wrong people at the wrong places, kind of.
They've all lost the ability to understand what storytelling is, in my eyes, and they all judge their audience. I mean, they've all got this in common in show business now. Potential audience is there to be lectured to because we think the wrong way, and we have to think their way. We have to agree with what they're saying, and this comes through with this brainwashing when it comes through to their productions. And I mean, look at some of the scripts. It is brainwashing. It's saying to youngsters especially, this is how things are now. Like you mentioned before, this is what it's got to be. You have to follow this to be a nice person. Utter nonsense.
But it's also the claim that, well, Doctor Who was always progressive. Yes, up to a point.
To a point,
and it had good messaging. That's absolutely true. But it was messaging of another kind.
Morals.
Where you had in Planet of the Daleks, with the third Doctor, he's cooped up in this cell with his scared astronaut, and he said the astronaut says, I'm really a coward. I don't like to fight and go to war and whatever. And Pertwee just says that that's not what courage is about. Courage is about doing the right thing, even though you are scared.
Absolutely.
And he didn't have to. End of discussion. And you have Tom Baker in Genesis of the Daleks.
Yes.
Finally getting to the point where he can eradicate the Daleks from history and says, yes, but do I have the right to do that?
Exactly.
Do I, the individual, have the right to do that? And then that's scene over, but it has planted a seed in the minds of the kids watching it to get them thinking.
Yeah. Well, I was one of those kids, obviously, that was growing up with Doctor Who at this time. And as somebody who was there, I would say, no, it wasn't like it is today at all, because as you're highlighting, the messaging there was a moral. It was never, you must do it like this. And it was never continual every week either, by the way, like it happens to be nowadays. But it was basically about, look, this is the thought. This is for you to think about. Do you have the right to do something like this? Can you do this? Can you action this? And for me growing up, and I'm sure for millions of others growing up at the time in the United Kingdom with this, with the occasional morals in this, I think we turned out to be pretty good. to be honest.
Yeah.
Rounded people who know right from wrong. We knew that war was wrong, for example, as a loose example. We knew that treating somebody badly was wrong, whatever it was going to be. But it's those. It was because the Doctor was a hero without a gun. He was running around the place,
Yes.
showing that there were other ways to deal with stuff, open minds, etc., etc. And that all seems to be in reverse now.
Yeah, and I mean, it was mostly entertaining, but it was peppered with messages that we could all agree upon, kind of.
It was
And if
a
you,
drama here, Richard, where adults were very happy to leave young children in front of the television on a Saturday afternoon around about 5 o'clock ish, knowing that they weren't going to be put into any situation where awkward questions would come up. Kids would have nightmares, but it was healthy.
yeah,
Everybody looked at those healthy. You've been scared by a man in a rubber suit. Oh, bless. Do you know what I mean? Oh, bless
I
you.
know, yeah, a
Yeah.
very wobbly rubber suit. Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. But adults back then knew that their kids were not going to come in eventually and ask them, what does transgender mean, or what does that mean? That was never part of the issue because it was never there. Much different now. I'd be very worried about putting any children in front of Doctor Who now without watching it first. I'd have to monitor it if I had kids. Do you know what I mean? I'd have to
yeah,
say, right, okay, is this suitable?
it's not that family event anymore. That's for sure.
No, it's not. It really isn't. And it's produced now. Let's face it. It's produced now for a minority of loud-mouthed, brainwashed, pronoun-using kids. Let's face it. And it is a minority. They don't have much of a say, really, in the bigger events of the world, do they?
And
They think they
that
do.
that is at the end the very weirdest thing that, well, the BBC, who are into the mass market, of course, why wouldn't
Well,
they be?
supposed to be.
Yeah, and Disney certainly is, but
Mm.
they are catering to a minority now,
Yeah.
and I know the minorities are, the ones who we're all supposed to cater to nowadays, but not in that way. I think
No,
because
not by
the
pandering. No.
I think a very limited part of these minorities are asking for it. They want to leave us out of it, please.
Yeah.
I have I have black friends, I have Muslim friends, and they are all kind of horrified by how, and I have three gay friends.
Hmm.
They were all horrified by how they are portrayed
And
and
represented. Yes.
represented. I mean, there one guy who in the U.S. Who is gay. He said, "I actually prefer, the arch gay representation of old comedy, like the Carry On movies or whatever,
Yes.
than the enthusiastically queer, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
wild man, wild woman who you can see in turning up in shows and also in uh, documentaries or whatever. This is the new normal for being gay, kind of, and we have
Well, yeah.
we have those guys in Sweden too, and they are the ones getting the TV shows and the music contracts and
Yeah,
whatever
because they're
because
ticking a box.
yeah, they're so fun to look at. For all the straight, look at the queer. He's so fun. He's so cool. He's so
Yeah, but
colorful.
you know what? Do you know? I hate that word. I cannot stand
Yeah,
that word. I think it's a homophobic slur. But
yeah,
when I look at who is putting themselves under that word, because I don't know how to phrase this properly without getting into trouble, but they're all heterosexual. There are
yeah.
no self-respecting homosexual man or woman is going to call themselves the Q word because there's nothing queer about being same-sex, but they've made it so. So that's why very much there is an LGB without the TQ, because we are not one community at all. And all these people that have come in from that aspect, nothing to do with us, nothing to do with me, and many people, nothing to do with us at all. Get a job, get a life.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I understand that. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, it's terrible. And the fact is as well that again it's being enforced on us. Even Doctor Who magazine is now using that terminology. It's another reason I refuse to buy it. $8.99, $10.99 a month, ridiculous. But it's using that terminology because they're jumping on that very misinformed bandwagon. Um, and it's just I find the whole thing absolutely ridiculous. I think these people need to really get a grip and grow up and stop pandering to the young ones and start teaching them properly and stop rewriting history and present it properly and let them get on with it. If they get offended, if they get upset, let them deal with it because this is the real world, you know. Um, Listen, we're coming to the end of our little chit
Yes,
chat here, but I do want to mention the fact you are an artist, aren't you?
I'm doing my
Um,
best. Yes.
yeah. Well, you have sent us some stuff before that we featured on the show in headlines, and I just wanted to really just mention a few more as well. So we've got these. Now, these are some of your non-Doctor Who ones at all, and I just love all this. This is your website as well, isn't it? Your lone animator on DeviantArt. How long have you
Yeah,
been? How long have you been drawing?
I've I've been drawing since I was a kid, and I'm fortunate that
Ah,
I'm able to kind of stumble along life working as an illustrator for
oh,
various
fantastic!
publishing houses in Sweden. I've also done some things in the US too. But yeah, the images you see here are from a Swedish role playing game. It's set in Scandinavia and it's about horror stories based on Swedish folklore.
Wow,
So I don't know if you can actually compare it to anything. It's quite good. And as you
really
can see,
great.
my style is very, cartoony, but it's the kind of I like classical art with clear lines. I love, for instance, Arthur Rackham, if you're familiar with him.
Yes,
And there was another guy named Edmund Dulac who did a lot of the children's
absolutely.
illustrations with
Yeah,
kind of clear, defined lines, and then they used watercolors.
that's
I
right.
used to do that, but since I'm now working on commissions for the most part, and people will come in the 11th hour and say, actually, we want the sky green. Can you repaint it? So I'm using Photoshop tools that imitate the qualities of watercolor paints and stuff like that.
Ah, because I was going to ask you what you were using. Let's have a look at some of your Doctor Who stuff because we're all Doctor Who fans here, aren't we? So these are, I mean, I love these because you bring a lot of character into these as well. I mean, the Fifth Doctor there with the plasmatons, is,
Yeah,
I think that was called the plasmatons again or something, and he's just looking a bit cheesed off there.
yeah. It's on DeviantArt you'll have to name your piece,
Yeah,
and it's a good idea to name to give it a good title that'll draw people in. So I think I call it oh no, the plasmatons, because the actual commentary track for Time Flight is hilarious. I think
yes, I remember that. Yeah.
all the actors are very much aware of what they were participating in.
Yeah, and,
And
and they remember the cold as well. Do you remember? Oh gosh, it's been
yeah,
ages since I watched Time Flight. But I love your gel guards there as well from the Three Doctors. Now that background, is that a photographic background you've got there?
I used it as a template, and then
Yeah.
I used digital brushes in Photoshop
Wow.
to paint over it, so I can pick out the stuff I want to keep and the stuff I want to, because
Oh
you don't
wow.
need all the details.
We've
And
got
and
another
I
one here as
actually,
well.
oh yeah,
Look at that. So you managed to get Pertwee's character coming out there. It's just so wonderful. This one from with Agador there. It's just brilliant. I love all this. Absolutely
well,
gorgeous.
yeah, I'm glad you like it.
I
It's
do.
because it's about the moments you remember. Doing fan art is sort of like meditating on the things that you love, and you do you have to do a bit of research. You have to research, Peter Davison's striped pants, so you get the colors right, and maybe look into a bit of cricket history as well, just for the
Oh really?
heck of
Great.
it. Yeah, sure. Educate yourself, and and doing the research, and this is the stuff I do because you showed the horror comics book stuff I did before for the games and
Yeah.
publishing houses. But doing fan art is relaxation for me. It's what I
Oh,
do,
lovely.
before I go to bed. I sit and doodle a bit, and most of it I keep in the back of my mind, but it's always useful to do a rewatch. It's a good
It's a good excuse, Richard.
excuse to do a rewatch, do some research.
I've got a
You
couple
know.
more here that I like this one very much of Colin's Doctor, the Sixth Doctor with the Vervoids. I love this one. It just this reminds me actually of a still from an animated version of the story. You know that you get today. I think this
Yeah.
would work really well. But the Vervoids come up great in art form, don't they?
Well, here's the thing. Doctor Who has always had wonderful designs, and I mean
Yeah.
these are comical monsters because they look like you know what, but that's why Colin is smirking as well.
Ah.
Um, but but if you look at everything from the Daleks to Omega's outfit, headdress, and the two doctors to Sutek. Everything is just like it's perfect art in itself,
Mm,
and you can take character design and put it on a shelf just as a
mm.
piece of art. I think from classic Doctor Who, and because they're simple, straight lines and distinct colors that bounce off each other and all of that. So when you're sitting down to draw, it's very easy to replicate it. And again, but it's like drawing Donald Duck or Mickey Mouse. If it's easy to go off in a direction and suddenly it doesn't look like it at all. I mean, you have to get the proportions in a Dalek just right, or it
True.
just looks
True.
off.
Yeah. Got a great example of that actually here, and I've shown this on the show before. But this one's joined by another piece that I just thought was wonderful because here we've got this beautiful drawing of the mandrill, which
Yeah.
just stands out to me. The colours, everything there just works beautifully. The fantastical nature of Eden, just stunning. And then this picture that you've got here of Leela captures the 70s for me somehow. You know, you've got the savage there, strong, brave, bold, absolutely fantastic. And I think these two, out of all the pictures I've seen you, I think these two were my favorites. I think, Richard.
Oh, thank you.
I love these. They're just there's something about the Mandrill one with the colours behind him standing it out. It looks ferocious there, and as I say with the Leela character there, that's how I always remember Leela, just being so stoic and so brave. You know, superb stuff. So there you are. You can see this. All Richard's work, a lot of Richard's work is on his DeviantArt page, deviantart.com. Lone Animator. Go and have a look. Great
Please,
stuff. Really good stuff.
please do. I actually brought. I have done some physical stuff as well,
Oh,
just for fun. Eventually, I might try to do some masks and stuff because I really admire the designs, of John Friedlander's mask sculptures.
stunning stuff. Yeah.
But I made my own Taron Wood Beast.
Oh wow! Look at
This
that.
this very. I don't think it's got any fans in the whole world except for me. It's extremely goofy looking, but I made this little
how did
puppet.
how did you make that?
I made a clay sculpture for the head and the hands and the feet, and I created a silicone mold for all of these, and I cast them in a resin that I
Okay.
dyed. It looks very red, but it's actually more orange because of the light in here. So they're made from plastic. They're very durable. A little bit of paint here and there to touch them up, and then it's just fake fur. There are. He's got a skeleton made from aluminum wire, so you can
Oh,
bend him
fantastic.
and position him. And I might have told you I do a lot of animation as well. I have a YouTube
Yep.
channel where I have stop motion animations
Yep.
because I also grew up with the movies of Ray Harryhausen, who
It's
is my
superb, isn't it?
house
Yeah.
god, if you will.
Yeah.
So I could animate this guy. I never have actually. I'm a little bit wary of where we stand regarding Doctor Who fan films nowadays. Now that Disney is involved.
Well, there's certainly a couple of things that I'm aware of that are in production, and they're working very hard on it. These fans, so we'll soon find out when they release them.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
sure, yeah, but they haven't stated anything yet. The only thing I know about is that there's certain elements of the production units, the BBC studios, whomever, allegedly looking at content to say, right, you're using a clip of ours, you're not allowed to
Ah,
do that. You're using
okay.
music of ours, you're not allowed to do that. You're using copyright characters, you're not allowed to do that. I know that's started to come in. We'll see where that goes over the next year, I'm sure.
Yeah, I have done one Star Trek thing,
Have you?
stop motion animated fan thing. Yeah, based on a small bit of backstory in an old Next Generation episode.
Oh, look at you.
And yeah, and I've done a couple of Tolkien fan films as well.
Yeah.
And I've never heard from anyone. But when it comes to Paramount, who I still think is the main copyright holder for Star Trek,
Yeah, I think
they
so.
have issued this statement saying that yes, you can do fan films, but you can only do them this way. They have to be only this long or short, and you can't use any characters like Spock or any known spaceships and so on. But you can come up with your own characters and your own spaceships and your own stories, and you can have it set in the Star Trek universe. That's fine, but you'll have to acknowledge us at the beginning or at the end. You have to have this disclaimer that you paste on. Okay, fine, and then off
Yeah.
we go and have fun with it. That's great. I would love to have something similar from the BBC, because they must still be the core copyright holder, even though Disney is involved.
Oh, totally,
Yeah.
totally. I think it's a little bit more complicated, though, of course, simply because part of it's funded by the TV license fee payer. And I'm sure it's a small amount now that the license fee payer, because we know Disney have ploughed in a lot. BBC Studios is a private company. Bad Wolf would have had to put stuff in. I'm sure it's very complicated, but I'd be very surprised if nothing comes out over the next year or two to state this is what you're going to have to do now. But let's just hope they use the common sense.
Well, let's throw the fans a bone, at least.
Well, they haven't
Uh,
yet. Let's face it.
no, they sure haven't. No.
No, they seem to be out to get us
Yeah.
anyway. But talking of that, listen, thank you so much for coming on to Who's Views and chatting to me. I've really
Oh,
enjoyed chatting
my
to you.
pleasure.
We could chat on for ages, but I'm sure we could. Please like the video. Please also subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. You can find Richard's stuff on DeviantArt there. And also, just mention your YouTube channel as well, Rich.
Yeah, if you look for my stupid old handle that I haven't changed, Bluworm,
Yay!
BLUWORM, Bluworm,
Yeah.
and find my stuff there.
I'll put the link into the description down below as well. And of course, you'll be able to see Bluworm joining in with many of our chats, I'm sure. So make sure you say hello to him as well in the chats.
Yeah.
Again, thank you so much. It's been a thrill to actually see you, and I'm delighted that you were with us. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me, and I'll have to say that you and your channel are doing a stellar job. This is exactly the place we need, somewhere where we can hook up and talk to each other and about the things we love.
Well, thank you very much, and hopefully you'll be back on again. We'll get you back on again soon. Thank you for watching us. This has been Chit Chat from Who's Views with myself and, of course, the fabulous Bluworm. Yay! Until we see you on another show, thanks very much for tuning in. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.